I'm Barry Glicklick. I'm an instructor at the PRC. I teach Introduction to Computers as well as Windows Fundamentals and some of the Tech Tuesday sessions. And so today we're going to be talking about getting more from Gmail, beyond the basics of sending and receiving. And some of the things are a little bit more beyond the basics, adding attachments and things like that. And some of them are getting into more esoteric, gee, I didn't know you could do that with Gmail, and maybe you didn't want to, but it's there. So it's got a variety of different levels. Feel free to ask questions and so we get the most out of it. So we're going to start beyond sending an email. Typically you can open an email compose window and type text and do things with that. A couple things at the bottom of the compose window. You can do some text formatting. So you can make the text larger, in some parts of it bold, italics, underline, similar to what you can do in Microsoft Word, as well as adding bullet lists, numbered lists, and things like that. So these will be familiar if you've used word processing, and you can use that to format your email to make it look a little fancier. If you're sending a link to somebody, here's something I found on the web, you can include the text in here. You can copy it from your browser and paste it in here. And if you click this little icon that looks like a couple of links in a chain, that will allow the person, when they receive it, to just click on it and follow it as a link. Emoticons, the little funny shapes with figures and things you can add to your Gmail. I'll run through some examples on these just to show what they look like briefly. You can also insert a photo into your Gmail. It'll be just contained within the text, and it'll look like it's contained within the text. And you can also add attachments, and we'll go into much more detail about that. Just to bring up an example. So if we have the compose window, and I say I'm sending to somebody, I can highlight text and make it bold or underlined. I can change the size of it to make it huge. If I want to add emoticons, if I click down here, it will give me a whole list of smiley faces that I can add in the middle of the text. And if I want different types of emoticons, you can spend hours playing with them and finding out what's there. So it adds a little bit of cuteness to your email if you want to do that.
How did you get the sans serif up there? I'm sorry.
So are you saying this whole bar isn't there? Oh, formatting options. Okay, there it is. If you click the A and the lower line, that'll pop up those other. Okay. Another thing you can do when we're sending, you can send it to an individual recipient. You can send it to multiple people as long as you have their email addresses. You just complete sending one and then either leave a space or a comma or a semicolon and then the email address for the next person. So you can add those manually. When you're replying to an email that has been sent to multiple people, you have the option of replying to the person who sent it originally or replying to all. And if you reply to all, the response will be sent to everybody who the original email went to. You do want to be a little cautious about doing that with large groups of people because not everybody necessarily wants to hear from everybody, yes, I'm coming to the party, but it's useful if somebody got the date wrong, you want to let everybody know, not just one person. There's a couple lines up here, the CC, which is an old term for carbon copy, if you want to add more recipients to that. Now in a personal email, you don't use CC very differently than you do sending it to somebody. But in business, if I'm sending something to a coworker, and then I want to let my boss know that I sent this email to the coworker, I would put my boss on the CC line, saying, they're involved, they can see the email, but I'm not expecting any action from them on it. The BCC stands for blind carbon copy. And in that case, the people who are listed there will receive a copy of the email, but the recipients won't see that it's going to them. So that's where the blind part comes in. This is particularly useful if you're sending out to a large group of people, but you don't want to have all your friends know all your other friends' email addresses. If you're sending out a newsletter or something to a group of people, that they each want to see that you sent it, but they don't need to know who else was receiving it, then the blind carbon copy is used. So, for an example, I'm sending it to my email with a blind carbon copy of person 1, person 2, person 3. They would each see the email as being from me to them, but they wouldn't see these other email addresses. If you want to add an attachment to an email from the Compose window, you can click on the paperclip, which is in that lower part of the screen. It will open up a dialog that gives you the opportunity to choose where you're adding it from and which file you're adding. And just to show an example, if I click on the paperclip, it will open up this file. Typically, I would want to go to my documents library, and I could choose the document that I'm adding, then click Open. And in this case, it's not going to open it in the application. It's going to add it as the attachment. And so you can see the file is added down here. And if I wanted to add another one, I could just click the paperclip again. And now that you can see the paperclip has something attached to it. So I already have one attachment in the email, but I can add as many as I want, up to the limits of the email system, depending how large the files are. When you receive an attachment, you can tell there's an attachment when, from your inbox, there's a little paperclip on the message. And if you trust the sender and the message, then you can click on the paperclip, and it will, or you click on the message, and then it'll show you what the attachments are, and you can click on the attachments and choose to download them to your computer. You can see that in my inbox, what I talked about before about having attachments showing with a paperclip. And so if I click this one, this is an email with photos attached, so it will automatically show me what the photos look like, and then I can treat them as attachments. If I want to download them to my computer, I could do that. Depending on what your browser is, Gmail will either store the attachment in your downloads library if you're using Chrome, or if you're using Firefox or Internet Explorer, it will give the opportunity to open or save the file. And then you can just choose where you're saving it to. Typically, things will save in the downloads directory. So this next slide talks about how to find something you've downloaded that was an attachment to an email, which is something that people often have difficulty with. From your Start menu, you can choose a Documents library, and on the left side of the Windows Explorer, there's a Downloads library there. It's not always listed in the libraries. It's not listed in the Start menu itself. So where we have the libraries listed in the Start menu, we show Documents, Pictures, and Music. But if we click on the Documents library on the left side, so then if you click on the Downloads, it will show you the files that have been downloaded on your computer through email or through other mechanisms. And then you can drag it. You open up the Downloads directory, you can drag it over into your Documents library, and then you'll find it where you usually look at files in your Documents library. For filing options, we had a class on managing your inbox earlier, and went into a lot of the details on this, but just to review, you can choose to, with Gmail, to archive your emails, which is just a big bucket of things that you want to save. It's going to save them. You can then use Gmail search to find them later on, and it's just a big storage facility. You can move them to a label If it's you want to organize things, this is very similar to if you use other email systems. They call them folders. In Gmail, they're labels, and they're slightly different. But if you move it to a label, then it's treated a lot like a folder. You can report it as spam, which will notify Gmail. Somebody reported this as spam, and if they get enough people reporting from a particular source that this is spam, then they may adjust their spam filters to flag it. It doesn't do you particular personal benefit to report as spam, and you do want to be careful not to report things as spam that aren't really spam. If you get a message from your brother-in-law and you don't like getting messages from your brother-in-law, it's still not spam, because spam is things that are sent out to large numbers of people. You can delete your messages, which will put them into the trash, similar to the recycle bin in Windows. And then you can also copy something to a label if you want to keep something in your inbox, but also have a label for finding it later.
Is there a limit how long messages will be in your inbox, or are they automatically deleted after a certain number?
From your inbox, they will stay there forever. From your trash, it will be deleted automatically after 30 days. So if you choose to delete it and then you say, oops, I didn't mean to delete it, it's not gone. It's like it's in your recycle bin. But unlike your recycle bin, which you have to manually empty, the trash folder gets emptied after 30 days. So yes, you can have as many as 20,000 messages in your inbox. I don't recommend it. I try to teach my mother, no, you don't want to accumulate that much stuff. But every once in a while, I help her clean it out and say, okay, these are things from 2014. If you need to find them, they'll be there. They don't need to clutter your inbox. One of the things that I find most useful in dealing with email as it comes in and in and in is that you can deal with messages in bulk. The previous slide talked about what you can do with things in terms of deleting them or archiving them. In addition to doing that with a single message, you can also do it with a collection of messages. So from your inbox, you can click on one of the boxes and then click a second box and click a third box, and then you can choose like 3 messages that you want to delete at once. So that's useful. Another thing that is useful is what I call a range of messages, the shift click. So if you click the first message that you want to select, and then you go down to the others, to the last one, or the second to last, then you can hold down the shift key and click the left mouse button, and it will select a bunch of those. Okay, so here's my inbox, and I have 5 messages in my inbox. If I want to pick an individual one, I can click that, and if I want to click a second one, I can click that. Or if I want to click a range, I could click the first one, and then go all the way down to the bottom, hold down the shift key, and click that, and it will select everything from the top to the bottom. And then if I wanted to delete all these, I could click delete, and it would delete all 5. If I wanted to say, well, I want to delete all but this one, it would delete those 4. I can also, if I want to select everything in my inbox, up at the top, this select button, if you click the little triangle, you can see what options you can choose to select: all of them, or none of them, or those that are unread, or those that are read, or those that are starred, or those that are unstarred. And I haven't talked about starring, but reading, having read a message means you've opened up the message in your inbox. If it's showing up as bold in your inbox, that means you haven't read it yet. So once I had opened up one of these messages, it would show up as being read, and then it would be not bold. Okay, so now we're going to move on to managing your contacts. Gmail has the ability to send and receive email, and we'll get back to some more specifics, more details on that. But one of the very useful things is that it can help maintain your contacts. When you send email to somebody, obviously you'll have to have their email address. But if you have a name associated with that person, then the name will show up in the email, and you can type the name instead of the whole email address. So if I want to send something to Mom, I can put in my contact list as Mom, and I start to type MO, and it'll know it's Mom, and I don't have to remember her email address. You can also add additional information about people to use it as your address book. You can put in their phone numbers, you can put in their address, you can put in their birthdays, you can put in other notes about them, and we'll get into some of those details. You can create groups of people. So if you want to send a mailing to all of your siblings, you can create a group called siblings, and it would just have each of their email addresses. And so whenever you want to send something to all of them, you could just type in sib, and Google will help you. Say, do you mean siblings? And you say yes. You click that, and it will go to all of them. You can also import and export your contacts. So if you want to save it off to a file and do things with it, or these days phones will typically integrate with more nicely without making you explicitly import or export. And the Gmail will also help you find and merge duplicates. Sometimes I'll get an email from somebody, and then I'll have something else from things, and I'll end up with the person's name in 2 or 3 different places because I've had different phones and things, and as they pull together, I get some duplication piling up in my contact list, and Gmail will go through and help recognize those and help you merge them together into a single contact point. Here's the example. In order to get to your contacts from Gmail, if you go where you see Gmail with the little triangle by it on the upper left-hand corner, if you click on that and then go down to Contacts, it will open that up in a new tab. And then you can do things like add new contacts, add extra fields to contacts. And this is the first thing I found this morning that had changed since 3 weeks ago. If you want to add additional information, this contact thing is going to look different. Okay, so when you click on the contacts page, you'll see a list of the people that are in your contacts. You can then choose one. There's a button at the bottom where you can. It's got a little icon of a head with a little plus button by it. You could add a new contact there. So if you met somebody and you just want to say, oh, I want to make sure I put their email and phone number in so I have access to it. You click on that and you enter the information. It'll bring up a part of a page that you can enter the things. If you click on an existing contact, it will show you the information that you already have for that contact. And it will include their email, their name, their phone number, their address, a line for their birthday, a line for a URL if you want to associate a web page with them. So if they are part of a company that you deal with, you might want to do that. There's other fields that you can add, and if you just have all the information in front of you, you'll be able to tell what fields are there. There's something at the bottom now that says show all fields, and then each field would be blank, and then if you wanted to add information about them, there's a line for each one. So that's something that's different from what's on our page and as to what Google is doing today, or at least this morning. One of the challenges of putting together classes like these is they're always updating and improving things, and so keeping up and making sure that we're reflecting the latest is a challenge sometimes. On the left side of the contacts page, there is a listing for groups, and so you could click new group, or you can expand it to show groups that you have defined. And so the first time you won't have any groups. You could click new group, you would give it a name, and then click OK, and it would show you something like this. If you click on this, that's how you would add a person to the group. And then you can start to type in the name of one of your contacts, and then it will filter based on what you started to type. And then there would be an add button that I could click on. And then I can add them to those groups. And then so I created a group called Bob's because I knew a couple people named Bob, and I might want to mail to all the people I know named Bob. And so there's a group called Bob's. And then I can add or delete people to that group as well. Similarly, class of 2015, session 3. Okay, I could define a group for that. And that's one of the things you can do. Useful settings. So the way you would get to the settings, there's a little gear up at the top, and you click on the triangle next to that, and it has a list of things you can do for setting on Gmail. And if you choose on settings, it will show you a whole list of things that you can change. You can change how many conversations are shown per page. So within your inbox, if you want to reduce the number of things that are there or make it much bigger, you can choose that. Are people familiar with the notion of conversation in Gmail? If you have Gmail. If I send you an email and it has a subject line, and you send a response to me, that's 2 separate emails, but they'll be grouped together into a conversation because it had the same people involved with the same subject line. And so once you've sent the email back and forth, you'll notice that your inbox doesn't necessarily get longer with each one. It groups them all together into a single line, and then you click on that message, and you'll see usually the first one and the last one, the first message in the conversation and the last message in the conversation, and it'll tell you how many other messages were in between, and if you click on how many messages there were in between, it'll expand that so you can see all the messages that were sent.
Can you change that so they'll all be separate?
You can. And that's what the second bullet. Thank you. If you don't like that feature, because that was something that Gmail introduced a few years ago, and most people like it, but not everybody does. And sometimes it can be hard to detect when a new message has come in, and you say, I just want to see the new messages that come in as they come in. I don't care whether they're following up on something from 6 months ago. I don't want to see all that. I just want to see the last message. You can turn off your conversation mode. So each message will have its own line in your inbox. There's a feature for undo send. So sometimes people compose an email, and, oh, this really makes me mad, and they send an email, and I hate you, this is really stupid, and they hit send, and then they think, oh, wait, that was a little harsh, I didn't want to do that. And you can't bring it back. It's sort of like dropping it in the postage box. Once it falls down, you can't get at it again. There's a feature that you can set a delay between the time you hit send and the time it actually gets sent to give you a chance to do the undo. And that's available through that settings.
Where are all those things? Can you set that for all of your emails or just?
Yes, that would be for all of your emails. So every time you do it. So whenever you, and if you say, give me 10 minutes before to undo it, then that means when you hit send, the message isn't actually going to go out. So there may be sometimes you say, haven't you gotten my message yet? I just sent it to you. Oh, that's because I've got this delay. So you get to decide whether what's useful for you and how long a delay it is. I personally don't have this one turned on because I never make mistakes when I'm sending mail. I mean, if I do, it takes me a half hour before I realize it. Or 2 weeks later, oh, I shouldn't have said that. You can also receive notifications on your desktop when you receive messages. So if you have it set up within Gmail, you can say, oh, it'll pop up a notification. You've got a new mail. I don't think you can get it to talk to you in the AOL voice. You've got mail, but it's close enough. You can set up an automated reply, which is also called a vacation response, particularly if you're going to be away from your email for a week and you want people to know, I'm not ignoring you, I'm just not responding to your email. And I'll get back to it. And you can let people know when you'll be back and customize what you're doing for that. That's very common in an office environment that people want to do that. And for personal use, you could do also. You can, one of the things that they have added to this is the ability to only send an automated reply to people who are in your contact list. So that if you get spam, they're not suddenly going to start getting responses. Oh, we have a live email address at this end. We didn't know that because they've been ignoring us. You can forward your emails to another account. So if you say, well, I'm moving to a different mail provider, I want other people to use that, but some people still have my Gmail account. Well, can I get emails with, or do I have to check both of them? You can just set it up to send it from your Gmail to another account. And you can use multiple stars for rating things. You can define different colors and things like that. I don't use the star feature a lot on Gmail, but it's a way of tagging things that are important to you in some way, and you can set up rules to do that. The settings. So this is what the settings looks like for Gmail, and you can see there's a whole lot on this page, and then there's tabs, 10 or more of them up here, that each of which will have that much information on the page. So here's where you can look at filters and blocked addresses. So right now, I don't have any filters defined, and I could create a new filter from here. So, yeah, there's a lot of different things you can do with categories and so on. Most of the settings I was talking about were on this page. The number of conversations you show per page. If you have your conversation view turned on or off. Signature line is something that you may see some people send email and they always have the same thing at the bottom of their emails. Particularly if you ever correspond with anybody from a lawyer's office, there will be a paragraph and a half at the bottom of, all information contained in here is not a commitment by any part of anybody. So if you wonder what that's like, and if you want to put one of those disclaimers in, it's called the signature line. And right now this account is set up with no signature, but if I wanted to, I could create a signature, and I could write things in here, and I can do the various formatting things that you can do with such things. You can include pictures, so if you want to have a logo in your signature, you can do that as well. That would be to insert an image in the signature. So, okay, so now I'm going to go beyond email for a little bit to talk about Google Groups. It's a separate tool. It's not at mail. It's not at gmail.com or mail.google.com. It's at groups.google.com. But these are useful things if you're communicating with a bunch of people, and you all want to be able to send messages to each other without having to put in all the email address or having everybody define their own group. It's one group that's defined in Google Groups, and it will have an email address all by itself. So if I want to send something to a group of a dozen people that I get together with once a month, I just send it to group name at groups.google.com or at groups.com. I forget exactly what it is. And then it goes to everybody. And the group can either be, wide open so that anybody can join it, or it can be set so that people can be invited to join it, or it can be restricted. Whoever defines the group in the first place is the administrator of the group, and so they can make those decisions about how open the group is and things like that. Each group member can choose their own email delivery preferences. So some people might say, I want to receive an email every time it's sent to this group, and I want it to come into my inbox. Other people might say, you know, this group gets so much email, I don't want to find every 20 minutes there's a new message from it. Just give me one digest at the end of the day that'll just tell me what emails were there, and then I can scan through it and see if there's anything interesting. The digest would actually group the emails up to 25 in one message. You can also just get a daily summary, which would be abridged. It would just be a section on the subject of each of the messages. And you can also say, I don't want to receive email from this group. So, and I want to go in and check the website because there's a groups.google.com, and you join the group, and then you can go in and look at it, in your free time. The groups can be moderated, or individual members can be moderated. If there's one person in your group who, always sends, I got this funny joke, and it's like, that's really not pertinent to the purpose of the group. If you send something, I want the moderator to be able to say, don't distribute this to everybody, but anybody else can be trusted. And so there's good things you can do with the group. Another really nice thing about it is that the collection of all the messages that have been sent to the group will be kept on the group's website. So if somebody joins the group 6 months later and says, how about we talk about this topic? It's like, we already talked about that. If you want to read about the emails that were sent on it, you can look back in history and find out what it was, even if you weren't involved in the group at the time. So Google Groups are a good thing to know about. And now back to Gmail. We're starting to get fancy. So some of these things are things that not many people use. I'm sure somebody does use each of these things. I can say that I don't use all of them, but so I learned some things as I was going through. So filtering emails is something that you can do. You can define a filter that when I receive messages, I want to give them a certain treatment. So when I receive messages from my brother-in-law, I want you to automatically delete them. And I don't want to even have to read them. Don't put them in my inbox. I just don't want to see them. Here's an example of what a filter looks like. You can specify who it's from or who it was to.
How do you get to the filter? Filter.
Yeah, so filter messages like these is one way to do it. And so if I said, particularly often when you set up a filter, you want to, you say, I got this message from my brother-in-law. Well, I don't want to get those again. So that's the point at which you would choose, you've got a message like that, and you could say filter messages like these. Here's what the filter looked like. And then I could say create a filter with this search. You can filter based on the subject line, or contain certain words, or doesn't contain certain words, or if it has an attachment. You can filter based on size, or within a particular date. So you could say, well, if I receive things on within 2 days of my birthday that have the word birthday in it, I want to put it in a special place because I want to thank them all in a big thing and send them a piece of birthday cake or something. So you can do all those things to choose which ones you want to do, and then the treatment that you can do to it. You can say skip the inbox, archive it immediately. You can say delete it. You can forward it to things. So if you, for instance, if there's a message that comes in that has the words urgent in it, you might want to make sure that it gets forwarded to an email account that you have on your phone that you only use on your phone for urgent things. you could say mark it as important, either always or never. You can apply labels to it. So whatever labels you have defined, you can do it. You could give it a star, or you could give it a category. So those are filters. They're very powerful. There's a lot of things you can do with it. You can get yourself in trouble sometimes if you accidentally. Oh, I didn't mean to delete every email that had the letter E in it. I was just thinking of just one person whose name had an E in it. So
I don't know when to ask this question, but is there some way to get notified when the person looks at his email?
That's a nice.
I think you're getting a little bit ahead again. Yeah.
Oh, no.
So yes, there are ways
I
of.
want to know, so. But I'll wait.
That's a good.
There are ways of doing that.
I will be glad to wait. It's important.
So more getting beyond normal Gmail use, little tidbits that I learned about, which I thought were kind of cute and might be helpful under some circumstances, but not something that most people would do most of the time. So I have an email address, prc.berry@gmail.com. If you add a plus and anything else after that, it will still get sent to. It'll still be delivered to my inbox. And so that's a useful thing to know. If I say, PRC Berry plus, ignore this message, then when it comes in, it's like, okay, maybe that's not an important thing, and I'll be able to see that. It becomes particularly powerful if you have filters set up. So with one email account, I could give all of you my email address and say you can send me things, and then I can give Mary and tell Mary, by the way, if you really want me to look at it, urgently, then say, PRC Berry plus from Mary, and then I could set up a filter that says, well, if it's from Mary, I want you to give it this special treatment, mark it as important, and do things like that. So that's kind of a neat thing to know about, and not many people do. I hadn't known about it before I started preparing for this class, so little tidbits. The next section talks about modifying your reply to address. So if you send messages out to people, and particularly if you're sending it out on behalf of somebody else, and you don't want the replies to come to you, you can set up through the setting folder once again, but the setting option, and here's a picture of what it used to look like. It changed a little bit, but it has the same basic content. You can say, well, when I can modify the name that I'm sending it out as, so when people see the message coming in, they wouldn't necessarily bury PRC. I could change it to say, the person you most want to hear from, and that might spark their curiosity and say, oh, who is the person I most want to hear from? And then they could look at it. It could change who they respond to. So even though I sent it from my address, I want any responses to go to Alfred E. Newman at Med Magazine, because I'm sure Alfred E. Newman wants to hear about those responses. So again, this is not necessarily something typical, but it's good to be aware of, particularly as you see mails coming in and you say, oh, okay, this is from this person. Well, who they say there might not really be who they are, because they could have changed their settings here. And who you reply to might not be who it was sent to, who it was sent from, or who they say it was sent from. So those are good things to know about, at least from a email defense and security perspective. And also if you want to go play games. There's one point years ago when we were hosting a murder mystery, one of these games, and somebody set up their email account so that who it was from was the character that they were playing, and these two characters were going back and forth in email, and it was amusing to watch.
Ugh.
So, then to get even fancier, there's things that aren't included with Gmail, but can be added on as a plugin. That can be installed as an addition to Gmail, and it will do things. Has email been opened, or has somebody clicked on the link? So there's a plugin. There's a number of plugins out there, but one of the ones that I found was called Signals. And so if you want to know,
Get into that.
you could Google it. Just the Signals plugin for Gmail. It'll tell you more about it, and it'll give you instructions for how to install it and things like that. That one was, as I said, there's a number of ones out there that will help, that can identify whether the email's been opened. This one was interesting to me because if you send an email with a link and you want to know if somebody clicked on the link, it'll even track that. So you can there's plugins that will let you send emails at a scheduled time, which is always good if you're involved in murder mysteries. You know, it's like, if you get this message, I'm already dead because I haven't logged into my email. And then you just keep changing the delay send on it. You can send messages that will self-destruct or can be revoked through Dmail. So if once they receive the message, it won't be there anymore, or you send it off. It's like, no, I changed my mind. I want to bring that back. If you have this special plugin, you can do those sorts of things, which will frighten and confuse people. I thought I saw that email. It was in my inbox, and then it went away. Well, I don't know anything. There's one that lets you remind you to deal with an email later. So you see something coming in, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I should do that, but I don't want it sitting in my inbox. Remind me later about that.
Are these all different plugins?
These are all different plugins, and the name of the plugin is what's underneath. So Boomerang is the one for scheduling, sending emails at a scheduled time. And there may be some plugins that combine different sets of these features. And you can freeze your Gmail from receiving messages. It's like, I've got too much coming in, just stop for a while. There's one for inbox pause. So these are all ones that I found that they're kind of cute, and some people might say, oh, that's exactly what I'm looking for. I haven't personally used any of them, so I can't vouch for them, but they're things I found on the internet, so they must be good. I mean, they seemed reasonable based on my perusal of what they had. Yeah, and if there's other specific things you would like to do with Gmail, you Google it and see you may find some interesting surprises. These are the ones that got my attention. Speaking of the remind me to deal with this email later, Google has another tool called Inbox. Not to be confused with the inbox in Gmail, but its interface is more. It was designed originally for smartphones and tablets and things like that. You can use it on a PC as well, but it's intended to say, as you get messages, you can delay them for a period of time by swiping them to one side, or archive it by swiping it to the other side. And it doesn't have all the features that Gmail has, but it has a different interface, and it's another tool that might be worth checking out if you're interested in exploring other email tools. It still works with your Gmail account. It's just a different user interface, or user experience, as they say these days. Okay, so that's what I had for the presentation.